How you doing? Yeah, here to do another little tour, guys. It's gonna be a good one today. I'm actually here in Queens. We're gonna tour around the neighborhood of Woodside, huh? Woodside's got a lot of cool history, a lot of good food. You know, we're gonna talk about some spooky stuff too. So, anyways, before we start, guys, you know the drill. First of all, Pat, how are you?
Good. How
Yeah,
are you?
I'm good, man. Thank you for asking. It's very nice. How you doing? And also check out the Patreon. Huge help. That's how we fund these things. Gets this thing going. And also like and subscribe. You know, that's all. That's pretty much all I gotta say. If you've seen these videos before, you know what's coming, baby. It's gonna be good. You're gonna learn a lot. It's a hot one today, baby. We got to go out and sorry, I'm gonna adjust my little mic. A little stuck on my boob. But yeah, it's gonna be a good one. You know it. I know it. So let's just get started. Pat, you ready to go? I'm getting bitten by mosquitoes randomly.
Buddy, I'm good.
Yeah.
Let's do this.
Sweating bullets, baby. Already sweating bullets. Look at us. We're suffering the elements. Let's do it. Okay, so I've talked about this in other videos, but Long Island, which the north part of the western end of Long Island is where Queens is located, was actually created by the drifting of a glacier like 16,000 years ago. That's insane. And it created this moraine that is basically Long Island. So I'm actually standing in front of Northern Boulevard, which is one of the main drags here in Queens. It actually takes you all the way out to the Hamptons pretty much. Long Island was actually, this part of Long Island, Queens, was inhabited by Native Americans, different Lenape tribes, the Rockaways. There's so many different tribes that pass through these areas, and this was kind of one of the paths. Northern Boulevard kind of maps one of those paths. This part, Woodside, was actually part of Newtown. Now keep in mind, Queens, as we know it, was incorporated into New York City in 1898 as a county, and it was made up of different towns like Newtown, like Flushing, like Long Island City. And it didn't have the unity of Brooklyn, let's say, which consolidated at that same exact time. Now, Woodside was part of Newtown, but it was farms. There was nothing really here development-wise. That would change in a little bit. We'll talk about that in a second. In fact, Northern Boulevard, very famous transit thoroughfare because during the Revolutionary War, this is where Nathan Hale was captured. You guys remember that guy? There's a statue of him over in City Hall. He's the guy, 21 years old, a teacher, Yale educated, was captured as a spy by the British, and right before he died, they asked him if he had any last words, and he said, my only regret is that I have but one life to lose for my country. That's pretty damn cool, huh? I know that if I was 21 and I got caught spying by the British, I would have been like, my only regret is that I brought but one pair of pants. I crapped myself. Good Lord. Before it was named Northern Boulevard, because it's in the north end of Queens, was named Jackson. In fact, there's still a Jackson Ave in Long Island City, named after John C. Jackson, who was the head of the turnpike company that built the road, but it was renamed to Northern Boulevard. Now, once again, stayed farms. Throughout the even first half of the 1800s, it started to slowly change in the mid-1800s, and we'll talk about that as we go. Now, keep in mind, a lot of this land was bought by a man named Willem Kieft, who was the head, during the Dutch time, he was in the 1640s, he was the head of the Dutch West India Company. Total loser, that guy. He really screwed the pooch, as the kids say. He's the reason that they brought in Peter Stuyvesant in 1647, because Willem Kieft started a huge war with the Native Americans that was a disaster and decimated the colony, so they had to bring in Peter Stuyvesant. He whipped the colony into shape, even though he was an anti-Semite and a little bit of a bigot, but you know what? It wasn't perfect, I guess. I don't know, I'm not defending him. Okay, anyways, you get it. So this guy bought a lot of this land, stayed farms till even post-revolution, also well into the 1800s, and we'll talk about that as we go. All right, Pat, let's go. We're roasting, baby. Whew, it's a hot one. Come on. All right, so we're now inside one of the big, I guess, features of Woodside. This is Calvary Cemetery. This is the biggest cemetery in the United States of America. It actually has over 3 million people interred or housed here, which is, it's a lot. That's like, it's like more than the population of Chicago, which during the winter only has people who are dead on the inside. Now, one of the reasons it was created was the Rural Cemetery Act of 1847, which allowed people to make money off cemeteries. Before that, you weren't allowed to capitalize off the dead. So imagine being one of the lobbyists for that act. Kind of creep you are to be lobbying to make money off of you know, the dead and their bodies, I guess, but it worked. So in 1817, St. Patrick's Cathedral, which is the one in Nolita, I've covered that one in past videos. That's also known as Our Lady of the Godfather baptism scene. I don't know if you know, remember that scene that was filmed there, Nolita? Anyways, they were looking for a new cemetery because it was starting to get too big, right? So they started the process of getting all this land. By 1845, they had 71 acres out here. It's since expanded to 365 acres. Here's a little fun fact for you. In Queens, there are 2 dead people to every 1 living person. That's how many people are buried in Queens. That's crazy. If I wanted to, you know, if I wanted to be around that many dead people, I'd just move back to Florida. But second best thing, just live here in Queens. Here, Calvary Cemetery is actually a veterans park within it, where there's actually veterans of the Civil War buried, the good side, right? The way I said that made it seem like I was talking about the Confederacy. I meant the Union. So don't get on that case. But this area is very, very beautiful, very quiet. You can go running and you know, it's very peaceful. Get great views of the city. Located between 2 huge highways, but you know, you can get everything. Thanks, Robert Moses. In fact, in the 1800s, there were so many epidemics. The people who were buried here, they were getting, you know, buried so quickly that they couldn't actually keep up, and you actually had to dig your own grave for your loved one. So not only did your grandpa leave with his problematic opinions, he also made you work once he kicked the bucket. So you better at least get that record collection from him. There are also some celebrities buried here. Dom DeLuise, you may remember him from the Cannonball Run movies. Kids from your 80s movies. Also the movie Fatso, aptly titled Fatso. Annie Moore, the famous Ellis Island immigrant. She's the first person processed at Ellis Island from County Cork, Ireland, 17 years old. Pretty cool. She's also buried here. So a lot of celebrities buried here. Good luck finding them. It's a pretty big cemetery. And it's named Mount Calvary after the execution place of Jesus. He died on Mount Calvary, which is still there, right outside of Jerusalem. So, you know, some people name their cemeteries Shady Acres or something. This one's named after a place where someone was murdered. But, you know, it is religious. It's tied still today. The trustees to St. Patrick's still maintain this cemetery. And Woodside is actually sandwiched with another cemetery at the north end. So this is at the south end of Woodside, and the north is St. Michael's. So that's the way most people want to be situated, sandwiched by dead people. Pretty quiet place. People come around, still run around here and you know, take it easy. Kind of dark, I guess, but you know, it does remind you that this is where we all end in the end. That's a saying, I think. All right, let's keep it moving. It's starting to give me the heebie-jeebies, as they say, you know? All right. Okay, so we were talking about how this area has been here a while as wilderness. It didn't get built up until, like I said, Calvary Cemetery, but then other little farms and things, but didn't really take off until the 1900s. I'll get to that. But there aren't too many old buildings here in Woodside because of it. In the 1860s, a man named Benjamin Hitchcock bought up over 100 acres from another family, the Kelly family. So this man named John Kelly had bought a lot of land here, and he was kind of sitting on it. He's the one who sold a lot of the land to this man, Benjamin Hitchcock, who then developed along Woodside, which is a street here in Woodside, obviously. Kelly's son, John A.F. Kelly, was actually a journalist, and he had a column in what became part of the Brooklyn Times at the time, called Letters from Woodside. And it was basically this kind of series of letters, basically from the country. You know, kind of like, oh, today we saw a chicken walking across the street or whatever. I don't know why that came to my brain, chicken across the street. Anyways, you get the gist of it. Letters from Woodside, and it was actually, that was one of the reasons why the name Woodside stuck. Today, you know, if you wrote a column called Letters from Woodside, it'd be about the best, you know, beans and rice restaurants. But back then it was about, you know, the country and the rustic. I'm standing in front of a church. This is one of the older buildings in Woodside. It is St. Paul's Church. Been here since 1874. Now, unfortunately, in 2007, it was damaged by a fire, and it's slowly been being rebuilt and everything, and they have a newer building next to it, and they still do things using the buildings, but it hasn't been completely restored. But just to give you an idea, there aren't too many old buildings here in this neighborhood because of, like I said, the later development, which didn't come along till like the 1900s. But it's still here, pretty cool, you know. And yeah, there is some Woodside history, like farmland and stuff like that. And this is kind of a little harkening back to that. Today, not any more farms here, but you get the gist of it. You know, St. Paul's Church. Let's keep moving. All right. All right, so now we're talking about the big issue here in Queens that's made it grow, and that is transit, baby. As you can see, the Long Island Railroad just went away, right out of my life. But this is one of the things that has grown this part of Queens. Oh, my train to Long Island is here in 6 minutes. But no, it was what grew Queens. So starting out, first of all, with the Queensboro Bridge in 1909, talk about that. Also, 1917, you have the IRT came out this way. That was today's 7 train, is what goes over Roosevelt Avenue. And you have the Long Island Railroad. The Long Island Railroad was coming out this way already in the mid-1800s. Now keep in mind, the Long Island Railroad used to be owned by the Pennsylvania Railroad, which was private, eventually sold it to the state in the 1960s. This here is the 61st Street Woodside Long Island Railroad stop, huh? Also where you can get the LaGuardia shuttle to the airport for free, huh? Pretty cool. So you could save a little bit of money and not spend, you know, $60 on Uber, who's trying to gouge you now. You know, it's funny, when Uber came out back in the day, I think it was 2014, everyone's like, man, these things are so cheap. They didn't realize that Uber was just trying to run out the taxis. Now the taxis are mostly gone, they can do whatever they want. You gotta regulate those guys. Sorry, I totally went off on a tangent there. Now keep in mind too, I think one of the beautiful things is the 7 train. Get on the 7 train. Oh, hey, how you doing? If you get on the 7 train leaving New York City, or Manhattan, sorry, to Queens, one of the coolest trains in the country, in my opinion. You get on it, you hear every language but English, which is pretty amazing. You hear Spanish, you hear Chinese, you hear Tagalog, you hear, you know, Esperanto, Aramaic, Pig Latin, you hear everything. Look at that, pretty cool, right behind me. So, very interesting because it plays into that diversity of Queens, which is really what it's famous for. That and the dead people, remember that? Calvary Cemetery. That being said, don't ever get on the Long Island Railroad at 2:30 in the morning leaving Penn Station. You will regret it. That is a tank full of drunks. You'll hear slurs you didn't even know existed. But aside from that, it is a good train. Now, because of the transit, you had things like, for example, in 1963, you had the Big 6 towers over on Queens Boulevard built. This was a Mitchell-Lama development. Mitchell-Lama was a law, a New York law passed in the 1950s that incentivized developers to create low and middle-income housing. That's it. And not what they're doing today, where they're basically giving, you know, subsidies to people making luxury apartments, which I talked about in my Billionaires Row video. You can watch that. But it actually incentivized them to create low and middle income housing, and it's still there today, and is actually a waiting list very, very long. And you know, it's pretty cool. It's called Big 6 because Big 6 was the union that actually developed it and took part in the creation of it. It was a typographical union, so made up of newspaper people and printers, and it's still there, pretty nice around Queens Boulevard. Can't film in there though, they'll get mad at you. You know, very close-knit community. The place is home to 983 families, and it is actually one of the first unions to allow women. Look at that, this was in the 1800s, so it was way ahead of its time. And you know, let women in. What are we doing? You gotta let women in and participate. That's half the population. What are we doing? We're gonna help us clean our mess here in the United States and the world. Sorry, that's me preaching again. Well, but what do I know? I'm just a dumb YouTuber. Look at that, here comes the train. Ah, look at that. Whoa, almost lifted my skirt up here. But now keep in mind, all this transit also allowed for other things to build here. So for example, over on 61st, right nearby here, is the Playbill printers. Playbill is the famous Broadway programs. They still print them out there. Every single Broadway show pretty much has the little Playbill pamphlets that are created here. Now it's interesting because they started to become these kind of magazines in the 1930s. Was the idea of the printer at the time wasn't called Playbill yet, and they basically created them into this little mini magazine with advertisements and things like that, and standardized them. Pretty nice. People collect them these days. They collect them when they go to their Broadway shows. Pretty cool, huh? That's a pretty healthy hobby. It's better than collecting, I don't know, Third Reich memorabilia. Isn't that what people do? So these are the things that helped spur the development of Queens along, but it wasn't until the 1900s. That was the century of Queens, if you will. Pat, sorry to keep you out here roasting. You feel okay?
Yeah.
Great. I just jolted Pat awake, unfortunately. Let's keep it moving. All right, so this is one of the things that the neighborhood is famous for. If you watch my Sunnyside video, you'd know that this whole area here used to be a lot of Irish people. Turn of the century, Irish people started to move out from Manhattan to the cheaper area and more space of Queens. At one point, actually, in the 1930s, 80% of the neighborhood was Irish. That's how Irish this neighborhood was. In fact, Calvary Cemetery, you look at the headstones, it's all O'Keefe's and McGillicuddy and McCullum and all these different names that you would associate it with the Irish. So I'm standing in front of Donovan's, which was bought in 1966 by a man named Joe Donovan, who bought the Cloverleaf, which was a bar here that was kind of falling into disrepair. He bought it with his dad. Very nice bonding experience with your dad. Must have been nice. Anyways, he started promoting it, making the bar more popular. In fact, in Thursday nights, he started offering free champagne to women. That also must have been nice. Okay. This bar was actually bought in 2013. It was in danger of being lost, but the actual former busboy and DJ of the bar bought it and took it over. That's right, it's owned by a DJ. That means when you walk in, you hear, sometimes you want to go where everybody knows your name. Wah, wah, wah. So one of the things that this neighborhood has today is many Latin American families and people who are now moving into Woodside. And one of the big reasons is because of this Irish population who is very Catholic, like Latin American. So a good example of this is, check it out, look at that, we're turning. Oh, look at that, you got St. Sebastian's. So St. Sebastian's actually dates back to 1894. This building was actually built in 1926 as a movie theater. Huh? That's right, and 1952 was turned into a Catholic church that today offers Spanish language masses, all those things, initially for the Irish, then it became for the Latin American families, huh? Pretty cool. The building was built by a man named Herbert Krapp. I think this might be a good time to induct him into the Tom D. NYC Weird Name Hall of Fame. That's a little, we're gonna start that list. Herbert Krapp, Mr. Krapp. But yeah, pretty church. You know, big part of the community still today. And you got Donovan's. Pretty cool story, huh, Pat?
Very cool.
Let's keep it moving. We got every possible noise. We got a guy drilling at the train overhead. We got helicopters, motorcycles. It's like they're doing it on purpose. All right, and so now this is one of the things that the neighborhood is famous for today. Today, there's a whole area from 63rd to 71st Street near Roosevelt Avenue that is known as Little Manila. That's right, the capital of the Philippines. This says mabuhay. This means like greetings or welcome or kind of like a peaceful greeting type in Tagalog. So the Philippines and the Filipinos were drawn here. Now keep in mind, there's only like 4 million Filipinos in the entire country. And a lot of them are located in California, but there are some here. Now what drew them here was the Catholic background. The Irish, Catholic, look at that. 15% of the neighborhood today is Filipino. Keep in mind, Philippines is a country of like over 115 million, spread out over 7,000 islands, archipelago, huh? There's a word for you. And you know, some of them have moved recently. Now, one of the big laws that changed and brought a lot of Filipinos over is the Hart-Celler Act of 1965. It was the Immigration Act signed at the foot of the Statue of Liberty. How much more of a photo op can you get? Lyndon Johnson signing at the foot of the Statue of Liberty, come on. I guess the only way it could have been any more American is if he was actually in the statue, like in Ghostbusters 2, and had her hand, you know. Anyways, that actually prioritized family reunification and also opening up the gates to places that had been neglected in immigration, like Latin American countries and like Asian countries. So those are the two groups that started to flood into the United States and still kind of continue to dominate immigration. So you have Little Manila here, kind of formed here. So you have great food. Around the corner is Renee's Kitchenette. It's been there since, you know, like for 31 years. Kind of wild. A lot of little Filipino juice bars and restaurants, all in this area. Right nearby you have Jollibee, which is pretty much the McDonald's in the Philippines. They opened a location here because of all the Filipinos. There's like 1,500 different locations, like over 1,000 of them in the Philippines itself. And you can tell by its little, you know, the face, it looks just like Mickey Mouse. It's okay, I'm not going to turn them in on the copyright. Besides, it's free, it's public domain, huh? So maybe I should change my mascot to Steamboat Tommy. You can go there and have your little, you know, chicken joys and yum burgers or sweet spaghetti. I don't care who you are. If you eat sweet spaghetti, you deserve what's coming to you. That's pretty disgusting to eat fast food. Now, just so you know, the Philippines was actually an American colony, believe it or not. So it was founded in 1565 when a man named Legazpi, a Spanish explorer, just stumbled on the Philippines, and they held it for hundreds of years until 1898, when the United States took it from the Spanish in the Spanish-American War. And you know, they came in and, you know, pointed to the Spanish and said, "Hey, listen, look at me, look at me. I'm the colonizer now." Movie quote? Yeah, movie quote, sorry, I'm at that point. So the Spanish-American War was actually a pretty important war in 1898. Believe it or not, One of the reasons they even had it was because this USS Maine blew up off the coast of Cuba, and then the United States basically beat the drum to go to war with Spain so they could get all of its territory and open up more markets for the burgeoning industry that was happening here post-Civil War. So they basically went to war with Spain to make money. Sound familiar? Yeah, that's right. And it actually had some impact. So the media had a huge role in it. In fact, William Randolph Hearst famously beat the drum. So did Joseph Pulitzer. You guys may know them. They went head-to-head during the yellow journalism days. In fact, they call it yellow journalism because there was a guy who created a cartoon character for Pulitzer's New York World called the Yellow Kid. And William Randolph Hearst poached him to his paper. So Pulitzer created another Yellow Kid and they went head-to-head. Yeah, and then you don't worry, the Yellow Kid had nothing to do with Asian people. It sounds pretty racist, but it's something else. But all that kind of interesting. And the Navy was a big role in the Spanish-American War, which is another big deal about the war, as well as creating an Asian presence for the United States in that archipelago in the Pacific Ocean, the first major Asian presence for the United States. So it was a very important war, despite the fact that it only lasted a few months with Spain because Spain was so weak at that point. Now, what people don't know is in the Spanish-American War, the United States got control of Cuba, they got Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines. So they took over in the Philippines and basically booted the Spanish out, but before they came in, the Filipinos were already revolting against the Spanish for their own independence. So they basically started revolting against the Americans. And the Americans fought a bloody war of repression against the Filipinos and slaughtered close to, some estimates say, 1 million people. Entire islands were decimated. It was a total, the concentration camps, you name it, just killing civilians. It was a total mess because they basically pinned the revolution on civilians because everyone was basically turning against the Americans and eventually squashed it, only to have the Filipinos gain independence in 1946. And that's all very depressing, so here's a picture of my cat. Aww. All right, and that's Little Manila. Showed you some of the little storefronts and the streets, give you a little bit of the vibe. Maybe I'll cover it in a different video, but worth checking out. Whew, what a day. We covered a lot, man. No problem. Thank you for apologizing. Anyways, we covered a lot, guys. We learned a lot. We learned about how Woodside used to be farms. We learned about the cemetery. We learned about, the Philippines, the Irish. We learned about the farms. I think I already said that. But guys, that was a little romp. Pat, did you learn something?
Oh, I learned a lot. Yeah, so much.
Pat, you look like you're about to pass out.
Oh, no.
Okay, good. I was worried sick there for a second. So guys, if you enjoyed it, check out the Patreon, huge help. That's why I fund these things. You get it. I've said it a billion times. Very important. Also too, like and subscribe. That's the least you can do. Comment too. A little comment in there. Help the algorithm. Huh? Help the algorithm boost this little guy. There's more coming, baby. That's all I can tell you. I'm sweating bullets. I gotta go pump my body full of electrolytes. Get an IV and just walk around the city with an IV of electrolytes. All right, Woodside, we did it. Let's call it a day. Pat, should we go have some halo halo?
Yes, please.
Let's do it. Oh yeah. Sick.